Good morning, Charles. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. Well, how are you?
I'm well. A little beat up from the Thanksgiving holiday, from a little too much food and a little too much drinks, and a new puppy in the life. So it's I'm just getting back to the routine this morning.
Yeah, I've had a bit of a rough week as far as today is Monday the 28th, and Sunday the 20th was my birthday, and
Happy belated, by the way, from
you.
me and everybody listening.
I appreciate it. I succeeded in eating free all day. Went to Denny's for my Grand Slam. Then I had lunch at Einstein Brothers, and then went to Kobe Steakhouse for dinner.
Nice.
But while I was at Kobe, I started feeling very cold, started shivering at the table, started coughing pretty bad.
Oh, so you had the gelato?
I had the medium rare chicken teriyaki.
I like mine clucking.
The food was flawless, but I just started getting so sick. And after dinner, my girlfriend had to use the restroom. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go wait out in the car. And I got in the car, turned the heater all the way up so that I would stop shivering. And basically had from Sunday night till like Wednesday night, just had a fever the whole time. And I thought for sure COVID finally caught me, but the test kept coming up negative. So I did two of them, and they both came up negative. So maybe I had it, maybe I didn't. I have read some stories recently of people saying that, the home test, like they certainly had COVID, but the home test never came up positive for them. It was only when they went to the doctor that they actually got a positive result.
Yeah. I mean, those cheap home tests, they could be expired, or they could be, depending on the brand. And I know there was some recalled, and, so who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was miserable. And then as soon as I started, so that killed my Thanksgiving. And then I gave whatever I had, at least either a more mild version, or my girlfriend's healthier than I am, because she had it for like a day and a half and then she was fine. Oh, but that coincided right with Thanksgiving and with our cat getting sick. So we didn't even go to anybody's house for Thanksgiving. I ended up I got the Thanksgiving sub from Wawa with the turkey mashed potatoes, gravy, and cranberry sauce. And that was pretty good, but
nice.
Not as good as the spread that her mom puts out at her house.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, then her cat was sick, and we dealt with that for a few days. So it was a rough week, but now here I am at Disney for last night and this morning, and then it'll be back to the grind.
Wow. Yeah. I had a similar experience over Thanksgiving early, trying to fly up to New Jersey, and that happened twice, or didn't happen once, and end up flying back early. But that's a story for our Patreon subscribers, so we can get into that into that mess. Also COVID related, ironically.
Yeah, it's still out there disrupting lives, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's.
And even when it's not, it's the flu for you. I mean, that was it's not fun.
Yeah, but every time anybody gets anything from a tickle in their throat up to a bad flu, it's always going to be, is this COVID-19?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's the first question, right? Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. You want to jump into chapter 3 and continue our tiny habits journey?
Let's definitely do that.
Yeah. I'll, in our Patreon episode, I'll also talk a little bit about the stuff I tried to do. And I mean, getting sick is a big challenge to any kind of new habit. Fortunately, having a fever for 3 days, my appetite was non-existent. I mean, there was one day where I didn't have anything, and then the next day I had like a pint of blueberries in my refrigerator, and I would just grab a handful of those when I felt like I absolutely had to put something in my stomach. But
Yeah.
for the most part, yeah, I didn't even bother weighing myself. I'm sure I lost a ton of water weight, but that doesn't really factor into my goals.
Yeah, no, see, this is perfect. This timing, kind of perfect for what we're trying to do for the tiny habits.
Right.
Because remember, we talked about like making sure that whatever new thing you're doing, we're making it so tiny so that if you're sick, if you're exhausted, if you're running late, you can do them, right? And so this was kind of a good thing. Say, hey, all right, now were you able to do, like, you weren't able to weigh yourself, so maybe we need to think of something else that's a little bit tinier or something like that, a little easier to do, whatever that might be. Or if it's not working, we switch up the habit, right? We abandon the whole thing altogether and just kind of, and not, and remember not to beat ourselves up about it. Just go, oh, look, this is an experiment. Hey, you know what? Wasn't tiny enough or wasn't enjoyable enough, right?
Right.
And that's kind of, that's a big part of it, that we're talking about here in chapter 3 here, is making sure that it's easy enough to do. And what's cool is, again, BJ's great at breaking this down into like logical steps, like a decision tree almost, where, you're going through and you're asking certain questions or thinking certain things as you're trying to figure out what is either getting in the way or, what's working.
Yeah. And, it all goes back to that stuff we talked about for the chapter, I think it was chapter 1, his behavior model, and, the vertical axis, the horizontal axis, and the line that tells you, okay, if you're on the right side of this line, then you'll do it. And if you're on the wrong side, you won't. And yeah, he compares, the person who wants to do 20 push-ups, your motivation, your ability to do that, right, the day that you decide you want to do it, is probably, neither one of those are probably high enough to get you where you want to go. But then just make it easier, just tweak that ability setting, and then you're doing 2 push-ups against a wall, which, almost any of us could do right now, no problem. And yeah, that really the only I wouldn't say objection, or really the only challenge to something like that, and I think a lot of people run into this probably with this book and maybe with Atomic Habits as well, is feeling like, oh, but if I start this small, then I'm not really accomplishing anything. And that's why so much of this book's job is to change your thinking on that, and to convince you that, no, even starting super small does get you in the direction where you want to go, even though, we all kind of obsess over these big dramatic changes instead of, the slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna mention that as well. That's exactly right. It's and what something to think about when, and my brain does it too, where I'm just like, why am I doing 2 push-ups against a wall here? This isn't
right.
And the other thing that you have to remember that he does mention, I'm not sure if it's in this chapter or somewhere else, he says is that's just the bare minimum that you do. If you feel when you're doing those 2 push-ups, when you first start out, right? Yeah, you basically try to limit yourself for like the first few times, maybe the first week, where you limit yourself to just that tiny habit or that starter step. But once you start incorporating that into your routine, then you do as much as you feel like doing at that time, right? It's a minimum of 2 against the wall, but if you're feeling good that day, you can do 20 on the floor. Right. And you can go up, and the key here, again, like you said, is changing your thinking so that the 2 push-ups against the wall here is just to break your routine that you already have and say, okay, we're going to, instead of having coffee and hopping right on the computer first thing in the morning, it's I have coffee, and as soon as I put my coffee cup down, I do 2 push-ups against the wall. Right. And that's the behavior we're going for. That's the change we're trying to make. Not necessarily, and so that's the first step of that. Once that's done, now we've at least remembered to not go right to the computer. It's all right, I need to think for a second. That's not what I do every morning now. I do the push-ups now instead. So once that's down, then you can increase that to whatever you're feeling that day, and it adapts, and if you may have heard this also for like like working out, right? They call the RPE,
Yeah.
right. Basically your perceived effort, right? It's your rate of perceived effort. Is that what that is? Anyway, so I think I forget what R stands for, but basically it's, you're not doing a certain number of sets and reps. You're basically, or weight, you're basically making sure that, because your perceived efforts can be different every day. You may not get good sleep. You may have had the flu over Thanksgiving. You may have been up late, arguing or whatever that might be. And then so that your perceived effort is going to be a lot higher for the same amount of weight than if you're fully rested, right? Same thing here is the nice thing here is it really, the Tiny Habit philosophy here and method really adapts to what kind of day you're having. But it basically doesn't require you to be perfect in order to execute it. Right. So, I really like the way he kind of, presents this in terms of, hey, look, this is the effort here is to break your normal, like automatic, I'm, zoned out. I'm a zombie. This is just, kind of like driving a car. Sometimes you drive somewhere and you don't know how you got there. It's because you don't have to think about everything you're doing. We do the same thing with all of our routines during the day. And so that's where we have to kind of wake up a little bit. And that's what these really easy and fun. If it's not fun, we're not going to want to wake up and do them. Right. So we want to make sure that they're also fun to do and we want to do them.
Yeah, and I guess that comes to an interesting question, which is, if you've got some goal and you just can't figure out ways to break it into small enough, fun enough parts, then, maybe you've set yourself up with a goal that goes against your core values, and there just is no way that you can set yourself up for success in making that change, because
that's a great insight. Yeah,
it's just
I never thought about that.
Deep down, it's not the kind of person you want to be. So you're not going to be able to, mechanic a way around getting yourself to do this thing. If you can't break it down into small enough, fun enough parts, then maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. I mean, and then you can cycle back and go, okay, well, the behaviors that I did when we did the magic wanding, the brainstorming of them, maybe the habits that you came up with weren't enough, right? You go through it. None of them are jiving with you. So, all right, start asking other people, start Googling, doing some research on your own for behaviors that, might lead you to your goal. And you just try to maybe go back to the brainstorming exercise. If that goal is important, if you feel like it's important to you, maybe you just haven't figured out the way to, to approach it yet. Yeah.
I like the illustration that he puts in on the ability chain, where he talks about, if you've decided that there's something that you want to do, there's a few questions you can ask yourself to see whether you actually have the ability to deliver on it or not. And your ability to accomplish the task is going to be limited by the weakest link in the ability chain. And the other way I like to think of it is, if you look at an old fashioned wooden barrel, how they have those straps, those vertical straps that go up along the sides, and then they've got the two rings, the metal rings at the top and the bottom.
Yeah. Yep.
Those wooden straps that go up, those wooden boards that are curved, your barrel's only going to be able to hold as much water as the shortest one of those boards is. And that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Right.
If you're dealing with, the scrap wood that you got to build a barrel, there's just one piece that is just too short, that it doesn't matter how long all the other ones are, you're going to be limited to how much water you're going to be able to put in that barrel.
Yep.
And he talks about it the same way with the ability chain. And so here are the 5 questions that he says you should ask yourself. Do you have enough time to do this behavior? Do you have enough money to do this behavior? Are you physically capable of doing the behavior? Does the behavior require a lot of creative or mental energy? And does the behavior fit into your current routine, or does it require you to make adjustments? And there are plenty of these, especially on the money side, where you can say, yeah, money's not a factor. The number of being able to do some push-ups doesn't cost you a dime. You don't need special equipment. You don't need a special room. You don't need any of that stuff. So, money's not going to be the limiting factor there. But there are plenty of other habits where money is going to be the big limiting factor. I mean, when I was, looking at getting in shape by using that triathlon, I guess you can just go out there and do a triathlon with whatever pair of swim trunks you have, whatever pair of sneakers you have, and whatever bicycle you can get your hands on. But if you tie like a certain completion time that you want to finish under, then you can't just borrow somebody's bike and borrow somebody's shoes and borrow somebody's swim trunks and decide that you're going to be competitive in any kind of a triathlon that people actually pay to sign up for and train for.
Right.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, in that case, money would definitely, you'd have to ask the question, do I have enough money to do the training and make the tiny steps that will lead to me being trained for this, or do I not have the money? So, I like the example with the gal that was having trouble with meal prep. And then she basically found out there was a tool, a gadget she could go buy that would make it a lot easier for her to slice up her vegetables for the salad to take to work. And that made things a lot easier. That's usually my go-to. My first question whenever I'm trying to do anything new is there a gadget I can buy that's going to make this easier on me? And if there is, then I go buy that thing, like lickety split.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, a lot of that actually, I think, has to do with, our experiences growing up. I think, my mom was always big into like gadgets and stuff, and things that would kind of make things easier. I worked in a kitchen for a while, and it was, I was a sous chef, so I had to like cut a lot of stuff. Right. And so, I didn't feel like spending 3 minutes, sharpening the knife before I cut stuff. But when I didn't, it took long because, my knife was sliding off the pepper potentially. And I ended up cutting myself one time. I learned that lesson the hard way, but, just like this last weekend, I was over at my girlfriend's place and I was cutting vegetables, whatever. And I'm like, I was working too hard. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just sharpening these guys. And I just took a couple minutes and sharpened them and, and made a difference. And so, sometimes you just need to think, okay, hold on a second. I'm struggling here. Part of that too is I think it's a similar type of mentality that BJ's trying to teach us here in terms of, making the habit small and just keep doing it every day. It's the same type of thing. You have to go, okay, is it worth it for me to stop what I'm doing, find a tool or find a way to do this a little bit easier, right? Because now you're like, it's gonna take me longer to get this job done because I have to stop and go and find something else, or it's not working the right way. Is that worth now going that way? But as you and I have both discovered, most of the time it absolutely is.
Yeah, this book is a great example of taking the time to read this book and get acquainted with it and do the exercises. It will slow down how fast you feel like you can jump into a new habit, but it's setting you up for success.
Yes.
There's a quote that I believe is falsely attributed to Abraham Lincoln, but I like the quote anyway, where he supposedly said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening my axe."
Yep. Yeah. That's a great one. Yeah.
And, the other thing you hear often if you're getting advice on doing any home improvement projects is measure twice, cut once.
Yep.
And
Mom taught me that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It goes against
it way too many times.
My nature is I'd rather just jump in and get something done, and then I'll deal with the outcomes as I need to.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, when you're trying to accomplish something difficult, it does feel way better to engage on it with some preparation. I mean, even just as far as we've gotten in the book now, taking a week off. And again, I was sick with a fever. So fortunately, if I have a cold, then I will often spend the time trying to comfort myself by just eating whatever crap I can get my hands on. That wasn't the case this last week. I didn't just go hog wild in an effort to soothe myself. But even essentially taking a week off of all the little tasks that I got on my habit tracking app, it wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't feel bad about it because I picked a long enough time horizon for my goal that I'm working on. So,
Yeah.
If I decided I wanted to get in the shape I wanted to be in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks, then taking a week off would really bum me out.
Yeah.
But the fact that I've got, a week shy of a year to get where I'm going, the fact that I couldn't do much last week because I felt like crap, it didn't also add an emotional component where I felt bummed out about, oh, I'm losing this time. I'm never going to be able to get this time back, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, okay, I'm going to feel crappy for a week and I'm going to do what I have to do to, make it through and feel better. And I'm not going to pile on top of that some kind of guilt or shame that I'm not making the progress I think I need to make.
Right. Yeah. And that's really important because, also when you're not having a huge mountain of a new habit you're trying to form or, a behavior you're trying to do, it makes it a lot less intimidating to go, all right, I'm getting back on the horse, right? You're either getting back on, you're either getting on a Clydesdale or you're getting on like a little pony, right? So it's like, let's keep it small. So you're a lot less likely to go, well, I don't feel like, I didn't do it last week and it's just this mountain of a task to do. And so that, I'm forget it, and then before you know it, it's weeks and months later. And yeah, so, that's a great point. I like the fact that it's really crazy how difficult it is to make things super tiny. He gave some examples in the book in terms of just like, hey, you want to read every day. And he breaks it down between a starter step and scaling back, right? So either one would be a good way a good thing to pick as a tiny habit, right? Where the goal is just get it done in the routine, in where it fits in your routine every day, right? So the starter step, he says for reading, reading every day would just be opening the book, right? Not even, and for me, my brain, I first went to, all right, just, read a page. That's not even scaling back. That's not, so starter step is the very first thing that you have to do that would come after the anchor. So of your routine. So if you're sitting in your chair and the very next thing you do is opening your book, right? As part of the tiny habit to read every day, that's the starter step, right? And that could be the tiny habit, or it could be, a little bit bigger, which is read one paragraph, not even a page, right? And so, and I think I mentioned this recently to you was, on a training course for the coaches, he actually shared something with me, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it here on the Patreon episode or you privately, but what I thought was really good was sometimes, like when he has this push-up habit where, he does push-ups after he goes to the bathroom and he pees, and sometimes he's not at home and he's at, he's a professor, he's in class, or he's at school. He doesn't do the push-ups in the public bathroom, right? So sometimes he might do a couple of air squats if he's alone. If there are other people in the bathroom, he's not going to even do the air squats. He might just look at himself in the mirror and mentally say, I'm doing my 2 push-ups. And so it's more about just remembering again, and he feels good about that, right? It just sometimes the tiny habit doesn't need to be exactly the same if it's related. So, maybe it's, the reading every day. It's maybe the starter step, open my book. Yeah, maybe, all right, maybe you left your book or you don't have a book. Maybe you left the book that you were reading, somewhere where you don't have access to it. Maybe you open another book, right? Or maybe you just sit and you think, okay, this is where I would open my book. All right, boom. And then you move on, right? And feel good about that because you remembered. And and the goal is, again, changing your routine, waking up from where your zombie state. And so that's a win right there. And I loved that, the fact that he mentioned that and shared that with us in terms of this is an experiment, but you don't need to actually be like a super scientist where everything has to be exactly regimented, right? To track. It's still flexible in that respect. Where sometimes when I think of a scientific experiment, I think it's got to be, very precise and exact. I mean, that's my bias, but, so I think that makes me feel a little bit better. It makes it feel a little bit easier to be successful doing this method.
Yeah. So that's, going tinier and tinier is definitely one of the things he recommends for sort of tweaking the ability side of things. The other is increase your skills, either read a book, watch a video, practice something that you want to do that you're not super good at, and get better at it. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the getting tools and resources, where when I read that, when I think about gimmicks, or not gimmicks, gadgets, what easy tool is there that I can buy that will make this thing that I'm struggling with easier than it currently is. And again, I've curated my life in such a way that my monthly expenses are fairly low, and so my disposable income is where I like it to be, so that if I'm interested in getting into something and I can find a gadget that'll make it more fun or easier, then I'm buying the gadget. And
sure.
I'm not going to let that tools and resources piece be the thing that slows me down.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like that, and I think part of that is also it comes down to some of our biology, right? When we buy something, a lot of times we get a dopamine hit. It feels good, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then when you get to use it, right, it also kind of you get a little bit of excitement. Hey, I got to use it for the first time. I'm deriving value out of what I just purchased. So I think a lot of us definitely fall into that category. Sure.
Yeah, and a resource you can think of is also human capital. Having either a friend with experience in the area that you're trying to work on, or even going out and finding a coach that can help you to develop some of those skills and shed some light on what it is that you're trying to do that you may not think of, but it's their job to think of it and to help you out with that. So those resources are very important. And I definitely found this week while I was sick that there are some things I need to have my starter steps. And what's the other one?
That's the scaling back.
Yes,
piece.
The scaling back.
So the very first thing, scaling back, is just making it a little bit
I need
easier.
to for my not eating sugar and grain, for my going for a walk every day, for remembering to do my testosterone replacement therapy once a week. I need to write down what the starter steps and the scaling back exactly is for all of those. So when I do feel just like garbage, like I say I could barely get out of bed because of my fever. If I had to go to the bathroom, I was still able to walk to the bathroom and use the bathroom. And so, what is it that I can do with these other habits? Writing in my journal, meditating. What can I do to make that almost as easy as just getting up to walk across my camper to use the bathroom?
Yeah. I mean, I think he put some great examples in the book, for reading every day, just opening the book, right?
Right.
Meditating. He wants, so the tiny habits, meditating for 10 minutes, just take the pillow out of the closet.
Yeah.
Cleaning the kitchen is just opening the dishwasher, right?
Right. I think he, he gives a lot of great tangible examples in the book for people to use for a lot of common stuff that I think we all are looking to do. Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be one of my little homework steps.
Sounds good.
I've got in mind the things I have to do on a recurring basis to drop the weight I want to drop, but actually putting it into those terms of, okay, let's say tomorrow I wake up and my fever's back and I don't feel like doing anything. What's the little stuff I can do, certainly without even stepping outside of my house, that can still make me feel like I'm moving forward.
Yeah. I think also by doing that, even if it's just mentally thinking, okay, I walk to the mailbox or whatever that might be, and you actually don't even do it and just kind of put it through your head because you're sick and it's raining out. I think it does help reinforce the fact that you're doing it for a goal and what your goal is. And it's a great reminder, just kind of help, kind of brainwash yourself a little bit there and say, hey, look, this is something that, keep on top of your head.
Yeah. I also like the attention that he put on the one-time behaviors that you can do once, when your motivation is high, for success. And one of those you hear about all the time is, people starting to diet and they just get rid of the food in their house that would get in their way when their motivation's low.
Yes.
And, in my case, I don't really keep stuff like that in my house, but I'm a bit chaotic when it comes to shopping for groceries. So I usually only have a few days worth of groceries in my house. So I don't really have like a big stockpile of cereal or bread or flour or anything like that or sugar that I have to throw away. I usually buy just very small quantities and use it up and then throw the empty container away. But
that's serving you well, I'm sure, though.
Yeah. I mean, certainly if I was feeling sick and I had, a box of Frosted Flakes and I just wanted something very easy and sweet and, fun, that it would be very easy to just, okay, let me dump out half this box of Frosted Flakes, pour in some milk, and that's just what I'm going to eat today.
Yeah.
But I know I can't do that because if I keep the stuff around, it's going to get, when motivation's low, it's going to get eaten.
Yeah. And I mean, it's similar to the way people talk about, you should never go shopping when you're hungry, because right. Your body is motivated to eat for sure. So so you're going to, and your willpower is going to be diminished in terms of trying to make, some healthy choices. So.
Yeah. And I've also heard that, they say how all the good food is around the outside of the grocery store and the crap is in the middle. If you're shopping on a budget, then definitely do the outside first and use up that money on the good stuff. And that will help you. If you go to the grocery store at $60 and I only got $60, then by all means buy your vegetables and your meats and your dairy first, and then you won't have as much for the processed food in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we end up buying a lot more processed food because we eat it more, and it's it's because the ingredients in there cause us to be but you can't eat just one. Yeah, it's because you put chemicals in there that
exactly
that suppress your appetite. That take away your appetite. So, oh my God, I just had the coffee. So no, not take away your appetite, but stimulate your appetite. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay,
you're gonna need to get some creative editing here on this. Sorry about that, Charles. All right. So, he walked you off of some questions in terms of, the design flow. So, in terms of, are you feeling motivated enough to learn a new skill? Yes. Okay. No. All right. Well then, are you feeling motivated enough to find a tool or resource? Right. And then, okay, no, yes or no. If no, then can you scale back the behavior to make it more tiny? If not, then, look for the starter step. And I guess this might be good for you as you're going through yours here, with ones that you kind of struggled with over the last week here, kind of go through that decision tree and see that, might be opportunities for you to buy a fun new toy as well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I'm trying to think if there was anything else from that chapter. I listened to most of it on a walk before I got sick like 2 weeks ago. And then I listened to it again this morning, and it's a great audiobook. I mean, we generally recommend audiobooks for most of the books we cover, but, especially with his story about how he had to, hire a voice coach and train himself so that he could record his own book. It's such a personal reading of his book when you put it in that context that I really do highly recommend it. And I've got the physical book too, and the digital. So I've got all 3 copies of this one. And I like listening to his voice, and he definitely reads it like somebody who knows the material and cares about sharing it with people.
Yeah, for sure. And he offers a lot of insights here. Especially in this chapter, one of them that particularly stuck with me was that our minds often, exaggerate the difficulty of a task. So basically, when we end up finding ourselves procrastinating, a lot of times it's because it's just the perception of the difficulty of a task. It could be, just as strong as doing the actual task itself, or more so. So, a lot of times when we kind of replay, doing something in our head and we end up not doing it, procrastinating, we just kind of replay it over and over and over again. we kind of build up that difficulty. And a lot of times I know when I've just started to do something, take some little step or action toward doing something, it's amazing how much easier it gets. And I think he was talking about, his flossing habit. A lot of times he was just flossing just one tooth. And before, and he's like, well, you know what? I already have the floss in my hand. I might as well just go ahead and floss the rest of my teeth. I'm here right now. Because once he got started, it wasn't nearly as ominous as what he was making it out to be. And I think that I've definitely fallen into that category as well.
Yeah, so do I. And I really like the way he eases you into it. And I mean, the stories he picks too of people that he highlights are so great, with the gal that struggles with bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
And how, she's able to use her motivation to do these basic tasks as an indicator to tell her, okay, I'm probably about to get into a little bit of trouble. And even in the face of that trouble, she's got these habits that are so small that she could still give herself these little wins, even on days where she feels, a pretty harsh mood coming on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think doing this also, one of the habits probably I would recommend with anybody, moving forward, is as they start to do new habits and start, especially with the tiny habits method, is maybe, start journaling at the end of the day. So that you remember that, hey, I felt like garbage or whatever, but I still got this starter step done. I still scaled it back, and I still did my tiny habit. And so you're, not only are you really, feeling good at the moment when you do it, but at the end of the day, you're remembering, hey, I got it done. And that can definitely change your trajectory for the rest of that week.
Yeah, that's the hardest part to swallow for some of us who feel like, okay, if I'm not doing a big enough change, then I'm not getting anything done. And it's like, okay, but have the roller coaster ups and downs of starting new things and abandoning them. Do I feel like I'm the one who should be deciding what's big enough and what's not big enough, or should I just listen to this guy and give it a shot and see how it goes?
Yeah. The question is, have you already tried to make things super small? I mean, you probably tried to make them big, right? And that didn't work, right? Exactly. So, okay, what else are you going to try? All right. It didn't stick. Well, why not? Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you've got a bunch of other reasons, but why not try to make it smaller and see how that goes? I know I just feel better about having less on a to-do list or less things to do for sure overall. Yeah. So why not?
Yeah. One conclusion I am definitely prepared to accept is my intuition on how to start new habits is not a winning strategy for success.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's just, I've done the thing that I feel like would make sense enough times and seen it not work out as far as a long-term change that I know, okay, I mean, yes, I've had some victories. I've for 5 years now, I've been much closer to my target weight than I was for the previous 15, 20 years. But that doesn't mean that, I've got it under control. One of the things I used to say all the time in business was, I work with a lot of small business owners and supporting their technology infrastructure. And man, the guy who has had the self-made man who's experienced a bit of success is the hardest one to give advice to, because his attitude is, well, I'm doing better than most people out there. I figured out some things, so now I don't need to listen to anybody about anything.
Right.
And look, that's a position I find myself in where, I have figured out some ways to get myself closer to the shape I want to be in, but, trying to get myself just past that to the real hard place to get to, I don't have the intuition or the knowledge for that. So it's up to me to say, okay, I'm not going to just get this done on my own using what makes sense to me. So I got to open myself up to advice from somebody who's not me.
Yeah. And, you also have to realize that, everybody has their skills and they've spent their time and money and experience doing different things. Right. And so, yeah, maybe you are successful in one area of life. Maybe it's, you're great stockbroker or you're, financial analyst or, IT guy, but, you weren't, you weren't Mr. Olympia, and you weren't a coach for, or a trainer for a sports team who's now, or a physical therapist for a sports team. Right. And they've been, while you were building your experience here, they were building their experience there. So, could you figure it out? Probably, but it's going to be a lot longer, a lot more difficult process than somebody who's actually dedicated their lives and has the results and everything. So look at them as a shortcut. And then how much is that shortcut worth to you? Yeah. And so that you get an idea of what, so when it comes down to pricing for a coach or for a program, think about, hey, that result, is it worth spending $1,000 to get in the shape that you want to get into, or to finally stop smoking, or whatever that might be?
Right. Why try to, just like we talk about, buy the gadget that's going to make life easier. That also counts for, get the advice that's going to make things easier too. It's the same kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, anything else from chapter 3 that you want to get into? I would say
there are a couple of things I do want to, but on the Patreon episode with you specifically, so we can dig in a little bit more, see how things are going with you, and talk about working through some of these things together to see, hey, are there ways that we can make some of your things a starter step or work a little bit better for you, and so that's that. I'm excited about doing that later.
Yeah, the biggest piece I will pass on from my own experience is, once you think you've gone tiny enough, you probably haven't gone tiny enough.
Yeah.
Your intuition that says, okay, I made this small enough. I'm only looking to meditate 10 minutes a day. That's nothing. I can find 10 minutes a day to meditate. No, go smaller. Go even smaller.
Yeah.
So whatever you think your starter step is initially, it's probably still too big.
And there's another reason why it's good to talk to somebody about this, whether it's a coach or somebody else, or do it with somebody else, because a lot of times you're going to get a little frustrated, go, well, if I'm not going to do 10 minutes, why bother?
Right.
I know it's going to come
to that way.
It will come into your mind. And sometimes you need that perspective from somebody else to kind of frame it and go, look, that's not what we're working on here. You're not really working on meditation. You're working on changing your behavior. Right. And then you just happen to be doing something related to meditation in that new part of your routine. Right. So, that's the skill that BJ is teaching us here, is how to do a pattern interrupt, and,
right.
And then we can put in whatever we want. That's why I love this, because it's really flexible too. So you can make all kinds of changes.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in that way, everybody who's reading this book and working through the steps and the exercises, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. It's just we're applying it to different areas, but it's all about understanding habits and behavior and building new practices. And once you master that thing, like you said about the gal with bipolar disorder, she got it to the point where she's now excited when she's decided that she needs to take on a new habit, because she knows that this process works. And
she has the skills to do it too. That's what we're working on here. Not being a better meditator, not being, a better eater, whatever.
Yep.
It's a better pattern interrupter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's so great. I mean, because it's literally a Swiss Army knife with every tool on it. It's just, what piece do you want to fold out and use once you own the tool?
Yeah. So,
right, cool.
So let's finish up real quick. What did go well for you this week?
Let's see. Well, I did start feeling better. I went out pretty early when I was feeling crappy, and re-upped on my NyQuil, and that stuff. There's nothing quite like actual Vicks brand NyQuil, not the store brand, not the generic, not the Alka-Seltzer, real NyQuil. If I remembered to take it before I fell asleep, I had a good night's sleep, regardless of how bad I felt. If I forgot to take it,
Nice.
I barely slept, and I felt like crap when I woke up the next morning. So
fantastic.
You know, I will be happy to cash that sponsorship check from NyQuil. But even until that comes, I got to tell you, man, NyQuil is where it's at.
Fantastic. That's excellent.
But just don't take it during the day because, I mean, if I was, there were a couple days where I was like, I'm just going to stay in bed today, and I took one in the morning and closed my blackout curtains in my camper, and it was my body's, as far as my body was concerned, it was nighttime.
Oh my gosh!
And I slept for like 6 hours, which I think was probably good for my body given the way I was feeling. But NyQuil does not care what the sun or the clock says.
That's fantastic. Very good. Hey, you know, I mean, it works.
How about you? What's going? What will for you?
What went well for me was got to spend, despite some travel snafus, got to spend some quality time with friends and family over Thanksgiving holiday. Had some great food, and felt like I got closer to some people and made some better connections.
Nice.
Than I had in the past, and so that felt good for sure. So. That went well, and we've got a new puppy, and she's been very sweet. So, been happy about that.
Does the new puppy have a name yet?
New puppy's name is Lucy.
Oh, that's a good name. I like that.
Yes.
Cool.
She's very cute. Very cute. So, all right, sir. This was
sweet, Dan. I will speak to you again soon for the next episode.
All right, sir. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.